We take the step out on our yes and watch. Only when we step out does the bridge begin to appear.
Derek is a powerful healer and soul restorer.
Your wings are big enough to hold everyone in them.
He just goes right to the core of whatever is your challenges and helps you rise above it.
More wealth, more health, more vitality, more of life.
You work with people in such a genuine, heartfelt way.
The energy that really empowered me is love, but when you see it getting back from somebody like him, there's no limit.
So that each and every one of us become the pure, clear channels of that divine destiny of greatness, so that we live a legendary life and leave a lasting legacy.
Derek is a teacher for whose time has come.
Let me just take a moment, if you'll indulge me, and tell you a little bit more about why I'm here and who I am, because some of you don't know who I am, and some of you are like, who is this crazy guy who's gesticulating wildly and all that, and is very passionate about something? Why do I care what he says? Why should I listen to what he says? And I want you to know that this isn't theory, folks. This isn't something I just cooked up, on a Saturday just for fun and put it in a book or put it out there because it's a good idea. This is proven, time-tested principles and practices that will radically transform your life and allow you to activate a flow of abundance like never before. But it came by I came by this very, very difficultly. In fact, I almost died twice, ultimately trying to improve my life to come to this realization and put it into practice. And I won't go into the whole entire in-depth story. You can find that in other places. But suffice it to say, like so many people, I spent years, over a decade, trying to improve myself. And after all of that time, therapy, years and years of self-improvement therapy, the only thing I improved was my ability to describe why my life was still so screwed up. I could point to those people, places, situations, and articulate with the best of them why things didn't work. But that was the only thing I improved. I was more inadequate, more frustrated. It was like trying to dig yourself out of a hole. The more I dug, the deeper in the hole I got. And it ultimately drove me to become addicted to drugs and alcohol, and to try to quell the pain and the frustration of struggling so hard to make something happen in my life. I mean, do you understand that? Can you relate to that? And I remember ultimately almost dying of an overdose, and I'm lying in the emergency room, and the IV is snaking out of my arm, and I start to wake up as the doctor leans in and whispers to me, "You're lucky to be alive." And I remember that wasn't good news to me. And when the doctor says you're lucky to be alive and you take that as bad news, you're in a pretty bad place. And I remember lying in that bed and wondering, how did all of my efforts to improve my life and create a life of abundance and success and get over my painful past, how did it get me here? They say the universe whispers in your ear, and then it taps you on the shoulder, and then it takes a 2x4 to your head, right? And I was lying in a bed of splinters, basically. I think the universe took a whole tree trunk to my head. But it wasn't quite enough. I couldn't understand what was wrong with this picture. My brother always said I had a big head, a thick skull. And it just didn't crack me open. I thought, I just need to try harder. I just need to work harder. Anybody relate to that? Right? And so I went out from there and I began to try harder, and I got some results. And in fact, I got this film and I was an actor, and then I went on this shoot and everything started falling apart again. On-set romantic disaster, the film went sideways, the actors were fired, the director was fired, and I was like, oh my God, I cannot catch a break here. And I remember I finally went out to dive in this reef, and I just prayed to get lost from everything above. And be careful what you pray for, because very soon I got my answered prayer, and I was lost in this coral reef, terribly lost, and then eventually trapped in this pocket of giant spiked coral, inches from my throat and my chest and my stomach and my face, surrounded by a wall of fire coral that was like, the touch of it was like 1,000 jellyfish stings. And I couldn't swim down to get out, because I would have been skewered by these spikes. I couldn't look up out of water to see where I was, because my whole body would have been skewered by these spikes. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even breathe deeply, because a deep breath would have punctured my chest. And so I had to breathe in short staccato breaths and swim with just the tips of my fingers to stay at that level. And I'm like that for a long, long time. And I began to hyperventilate. I began to wonder, maybe somebody will find me. And then eventually I realized nobody knew I was out there. And my mind went through all of these scenarios, and none of my wit and cleverness and charm and affirmations, none of it was helping me get anywhere. There was no more scenarios. There was no more options. You know, I tried to bargain with the universe. God, if you get me out of this, I promise I'll go to church on Sunday. And the universe was not negotiating. And there was this profound moment where I was no longer just afraid I was going to drown or die, but I knew I was going to drown. I just get chills now as I remember that moment. It was that final. And all that was left for me was to let go. Complete unconditional surrender. And so I did. I just let go. And in that moment, something cracked open inside of me. It was like my ego was ripped from its moorings. Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall. And in that crack of the shell, this light came through, and I saw that this self, and this was an instant, but I saw that this self that I've been trying to heal and fix and improve was an amalgamation of parental fantasies and peer pressure and societal conditioning, and it wasn't real. And no amount of effort was going to change it. I would never be able to fix that guy or improve that guy. And I saw right behind that, there was a me that was never damaged, so it didn't need to be improved, and it was already whole and complete, so it didn't need to be fixed, it didn't need to be improved. Now this was a split second. I didn't have the words for it then, but it shifted something so dramatically. And in the next instant, and I still don't know exactly how this happened, I was out of the water. I don't know if the wave came along or the water lifted or I literally walked on water, but the next moment I'm standing on the reef looking where I'd been stuck. The exit was inches from me the whole time, but I couldn't see it. And this maze, it was like a metaphor for my life. I'd been swimming through this maze, following all these brightly colored fish and shiny objects, and was ultimately lost and gasping and choking. And maybe you feel like that. Maybe you feel like you've been swimming through this maze, following all these brightly colored objects, and ultimately you feel trapped, you feel stuck. You feel like you can barely catch your breath. You feel like you're drowning. And that was me. And ultimately, I pulled out of society. I was going to become a monk, but that didn't work too well. 3 days into that, I broke into the monk's kitchen, stole food from the refrigerator in the middle of the night, like some feral creature scurrying out of the woods, and leaving little breadcrumbs as I left. And the monks kindly suggested maybe the monastic life wasn't for me. And I eventually cloistered myself in my apartment, and I began to go on this inner journey. And I discovered this principle that just as the oak is within the acorn doesn't have to attract or achieve or earn an oak. When the conditions are right, that potential within the seed naturally emerges, and I called that the law of emergence. And I began to see that this same principle applied to the generation of wealth and abundance, that was also in the seed, that the seed brings with it everything it needs to build that tree, and that within you is everything you need to build the life of your dreams. And I went from being broke and broken, suicidal, living on 19-cent boxes of mac and cheese, and in a one-room apartment, and within a very short time, abundance started to flow. I began to travel the world. I went to million-dollar homes and ultimately built a 7-figure transformational business. And all the things I've been struggling to get, I began to open up and let them unfold and emerge in my life through the principles that we're going to learn through this training.